The immense doors of the Galactic Council chamber hissed open with a sound like distant thunder. Ambassador Thomas Reed stepped through the threshold and stopped, his breath catching in his throat despite years of diplomatic training. Nothing could have prepared him for this moment. The chamber stretched beyond human comprehension, its crystalline walls rising into darkness, where alien constellations swirled in artificial skies. Floating platforms held representatives from species that defied every category of Earth biology. Some appeared as living crystal formations that pulsed with inner light. Others resembled metallic spiders with dozens of writhing appendages. A few looked almost human until they moved, revealing joints that bent in impossible directions. Reed walked down the central path, his simple black suit a stark contrast to the elaborate biomechanical armor and flowing energy robes surrounding him. Above, holographic galleries displayed thousands more alien faces watching this historic moment. The weight of their collective gaze pressed down like a physical force. The 12 primary thrones formed a perfect circle at the chamber's heart, each carved from materials that seemed to absorb light itself. The being occupying the central throne commanded immediate attention. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak of the Dominion stood nearly 4 meters tall, his 6 arms ending in claws that could tear through steel. Multiple eyes arranged across his elongated skull fixed on the human with predatory focus. Human representative. Vorthak's voice boomed through translation matrices that turned his complex vocalizations into words Reed could understand. You stand before the Supreme Council of Galactic Civilization. State your species' petition for membership. Reed had rehearsed this moment countless times, but standing here felt like addressing gods. These beings had shaped galactic politics for millennia. Their civilizations spanned hundreds of star systems, while humanity barely controlled their own solar system. Yet something in their posture seemed wrong. Too eager, too hungry. Honored Supreme Chancellor, Reed began, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. Humanity seeks membership in the galactic community. We offer our resources, our knowledge, and our commitment to peaceful cooperation. A sound like grinding metal emerged from the crystal formation on Vorthak's right. Ambassador Nexus of the Collective spoke with harmonics that made Reed's teeth ache. Resources. Yes, your species shows promise in biological diversity. Your worlds contain useful minerals, but what can primitives offer civilizations that have mastered the stars for thousands of years? Reed felt a chill run down his spine. The way Nexus said biological diversity made it sound like livestock evaluation. We bring fresh perspectives, innovative thinking, and a strong desire to contribute to galactic peace. Peace, repeated Chancellor Morvex from the third throne, her serpentine form coiling with what might have been amusement. Such a quaint concept. Tell us, human, what do you know of the Catherian Accord? Reed's diplomatic training kicked in, but he had never heard of any Catherian Accord in the pre-contact briefings. I'm afraid that wasn't covered in our preliminary information packages, Chancellor. Of course not, Vorthak said, his multiple eyes glittering. The Catherian species no longer exist to discuss it. They were absorbed into the greater galactic community after certain misunderstandings about resource allocation. The casual tone sent ice through Reed's veins. These beings were discussing genocide as if it were a bureaucratic procedure. He glanced around the chamber, noticing details that had escaped his attention before. Many of the observer galleries showed species wearing identical restraint collars. Guard positions were occupied by beings whose eyes held no intelligence, only the vacant stare of chemical control. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Xyloth from the fourth throne, his insectoid mandibles clicking rhythmically, we should discuss humanity's integration timeline. Your species shows remarkable adaptability. Your population of 8 billion would provide excellent labor resources for our mining operations in the Outer Rim. Reed's blood ran cold. Labor resources. They weren't talking about membership. They were talking about slavery. I believe there's been a misunderstanding, Reed said carefully, his diplomatic training warring with rising panic. Humanity seeks partnership, not employment opportunities. The sound that emerged from several throats might have been laughter in a dozen different languages. Vorthak leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. Partnership? The Supreme Chancellor's voice dripped with condescension. Child, you represent a species that achieved spaceflight 50 years ago. We have ruled the galaxy since before your star ignited. Partnership requires equality. What you offer is submission to proper guidance. Reed's mind raced through the implications. Every diplomatic protocol, every carefully negotiated trade agreement, every promise of mutual benefit had been lies. Humanity hadn't been invited to join galactic civilization. They had been summoned for processing. Your species will be relocated to appropriate facilities, Morvex continued, her serpentine form beginning to uncoil. Productive members will serve in our industrial complexes. The remainder will provide biological samples for our research divisions. It is a great honor. I need to consult with my government, Reed managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Consultation is unnecessary, Xyloth clicked. Your primitive governments lack the perspective to make informed decisions. The Council has already determined humanity's optimal contribution to galactic society. Reed felt the Chamber's attention focus on him like a weapon. These beings had done this before countless times. They would strip Earth of its people, its resources, its very identity, then move on to the next system containing promising prey. The human appears distressed, observed Nexus, her crystalline form pulsing with what might have been amusement. Perhaps he requires clarification of the benefits our guidance provides. Holographic displays materialized around Reed, showing peaceful worlds where diverse species work together in apparent harmony. But now he could see the truth hidden in plain sight. The workers moved with mechanical precision. The guard towers at regular intervals. The absence of children in any of the images. These are survivors of previous integrations, Vorthak explained. The Altarians provided excellent technical skills before their integration. The Vegans contributed useful artistic sensibilities. The Cetaceans offered unique perspectives on aquatic resource management. All now serve the greater galactic good. Reed's legs felt weak. Humanity had spent decades preparing for first contact, imagining the wonders of galactic civilization. Instead, they had stumbled into an abattoir disguised as paradise. Your integration begins immediately, Morvex announced. Transport vessels are already positioned around your system. Your leaders will cooperate, or face the same administrative corrections applied to the Catherians. Administrative corrections, Reed repeated numbly. Species-wide sterilization, Xyloth clarified helpfully. Quite painless when properly applied. Though we prefer voluntary cooperation, it produces better work attitudes. Reed straightened slowly, something hardening in his expression. These beings expected terror, pleading, desperate bargaining. They had reduced first contact to a business transaction where humanity was the product being sold. You know, Reed said quietly, there's something I should probably mention. Speak, Vorthak commanded, clearly expecting some final, desperate plea. Reed reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small device that looked remarkably primitive compared to the technology surrounding him. He activated it with a simple touch. For the past 6 months, while we've been exchanging diplomatic messages, humanity has been conducting its own survey of galactic civilization. The device projected a holographic star map, showing the galaxy's spiral arms. Red markers began appearing throughout the display, thousands of them scattered across every major trade route and population center. What is this? Morvex demanded. Reed's smile held no warmth whatsoever. These represent human observation posts. We've been watching you. The red markers continued multiplying until the galaxy appeared infected with crimson light. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of translation matrices struggling to process the implications. You see, Reed continued conversationally, humanity learned long ago that when someone invites you to a meeting, you should always scout the neighborhood first, and what we found was very interesting indeed. Vorthak rose from his throne, his massive form trembling with rage. Impossible. Your species lacks the technology for such operations. Does it? Reed asked softly. Are you absolutely certain about that? The question hung in the air like a death sentence, and for the first time in millennia, the masters of galactic civilization began to understand that they might have made a terrible mistake. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of Ambassador Reed's shocking revelation. The chamber that normally echoed with the confident voices of galactic authority now buzzed with urgent whispers and barely contained panic. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak paced behind his throne, his 6 arms gesturing frantically as subordinates fed him streams of data. Report, he commanded, his voice lacking its usual authoritative boom. Fleet Admiral Korvash materialized as a hologram in the chamber's center. his scarred carapace bearing witness to 1,000 battles across the galaxy. But now, uncertainty clouded his multiple eyes. The situation is unprecedented, Supreme Chancellor. We've confirmed human surveillance equipment at key positions throughout our territory. Their technology is unlike anything in our databases. Ambassador Nexus pulsed with agitated frequencies. How many observation posts exactly? Current count exceeds 15,000 and continues rising. They're revealing positions we never detected, demonstrating stealth capabilities that surpass our best military systems. Chancellor Morvex coiled tighter around her throne, her serpentine form betraying anxiety. Analysis of their technological base? Problematic, Corvash admitted grimly. These devices use principles our science division cannot immediately classify. Either they've made breakthrough discoveries or what? Forthak demanded. Or they've been more advanced than we realized from the beginning. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Ambassador Xyloth's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. Impossible. Our initial surveys showed primitive fusion drives and basic metallurgy. What if, interjected a new voice, we only saw what they wanted us to see? All attention turned to Elder Physician Talmec, keeper of the Council's historical records. The ancient being rarely attended sessions, preferring the solitude of the archive chambers. His presence meant something significant. Elder, Vorthak acknowledged with forced respect. What insights do your records provide? Talmec moved slowly to the chamber's center, his long fingers manipulating holographic controls that displayed humanity's first contact files. I have been reviewing our initial assessment protocols. We may have made a fundamental error. The display showed Earth as observed by Council scouts 3 years ago, a blue world with radio emissions and chemical rockets. Simple, primitive, unremarkable. We assumed their rapid technological development after first contact was normal species advancement, Talmec continued. But observe the patterns. The timeline shifted, showing humanity's expansion into their outer solar system. Mining operations on asteroids, industrial installations around gas giants, fusion reactors that appeared overnight. They weren't learning from our knowledge exchanges, Nexus realized, her crystalline form dimming. They were unveiling existing capabilities. Precisely. The question becomes, why would an advanced species deliberately appear primitive? Admiral Corvash processed the implications with military efficiency. Strategic deception. They were evaluating galactic civilization while presenting minimal threat signatures. Forthak's roar shook the chamber. Evaluation? They were studying us like specimens. It gets worse, Corvash continued, activating his tactical displays. We've intercepted fragments of human communications. They aren't just positioned at our infrastructure. They're analyzing our entire civilization. Economic patterns, military capabilities, social structures. They've been preparing, Morvex whispered. But preparing for what? Their answer came in the form of an incoming transmission marked with humanity's diplomatic seal. Ambassador Reed's face appeared, but his location had changed. Instead of simple quarters, he now stood in what appeared to be a vast command center, with star charts stretching beyond the display's edges. Honored council members, Reed began, his demeanor completely transformed from the nervous diplomat they remembered. I trust you've had time to process our revelation. Vorthak stepped forward aggressively. Human, you will explain these surveillance operations immediately. Reed's expression remained calm. Supreme Chancellor, I'm afraid that phase of our relationship has ended. You see, humanity has reached some conclusions about galactic civilization. The camera perspective widened, revealing the true scope of Reed's location. The command center stretched for kilometers, filled with holographic displays showing real-time data from across the galaxy. Uniformed personnel coordinated what was clearly an operation of massive complexity. For 3 years, we've observed your civilization's methods, Reed continued. The systematic absorption of younger species, the elimination of populations that resist integration, the careful maintenance of technology gaps to prevent challenges to your authority. How dare you? Xyloth clicked furiously. The Council brings order to chaos. We guide primitive species toward productive contribution. You harvest them, Reed corrected, his voice turning cold. 67 species in the past millennium, all following the same pattern. Initial contact, integration agreements, then systematic population transfer to labor facilities. The tactical displays around the chamber suddenly updated with devastating information. Human surveillance had recorded everything. The real purpose of integration facilities. The fate of species that resisted. The careful lies told to each new civilization. This is classified information, Morvex hissed. How did you access council archives? Reed's smile held no warmth. Chancellor, we didn't access your archives. We've been watching you create them. A new figure joined Reed in the transmission, an elderly human woman whose presence commanded immediate attention despite her small stature. Council members, she began. I am Director Patricia Hayes, Commander of Earth's Strategic Defense Initiative. For 30 years I have been preparing for this moment. 30 years. Nexus pulsed with confusion. But first contact was only 3 years ago. First official contact, Hayes corrected. Humanity detected your surveillance networks decades ago. We've been monitoring galactic civilization ever since, waiting to determine your true intentions. The display shifted again, showing a comprehensive analysis of galactic politics, trade routes designed to create dependencies, military positioning that prevented species from developing effective resistance, economic systems that funneled resources toward council worlds. Your civilization is a parasite, Hayes continued with clinical precision. You've created a system where technological advancement is punished, independence is impossible, and entire species exist only to serve your industrial needs. Admiral Korvash frantically worked his tactical systems. The energy signatures we're detecting from the Sol system, they're impossible. Either our sensors are malfunctioning or Earth isn't the primitive world you thought it was, Hayes finished. What you observed was our diplomatic facility, a carefully maintained simulation, designed to present exactly the technological level we wanted you to see. The revelation hit like a supernova. Everything the Council thought they knew about humanity was wrong. The real Earth, Hayes continued, houses our primary research and development centers. But most of humanity lives elsewhere. Have you wondered why your long-range sensors have never detected our actual population centers? Space around Earth began revealing itself on the tactical displays. Massive installations that had been completely invisible to Council sensors materialized like ghosts becoming solid. Industrial complexes that dwarfed anything in Council space. Fleet anchorages containing vessels whose energy signatures exceeded the Council's most advanced battleships. Stealth technology, Korvash breathed. They've been hiding an entire civilization. Not hiding, Hayes corrected. Preparing. We needed to understand what we were dealing with before revealing ourselves. Vorthak's massive form trembled with rage, and something else entirely. Fear. What do you want? Change, Hayes replied simply. The current system ends today. No more harvesting of populations. No more technological suppression. No more parasitic control of galactic civilization. And if we refuse? Morvex challenged. Hayes' expression didn't change. Chancellor, you've built your power on the assumption that younger species are helpless against established authority. That assumption was incorrect. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in absolute silence. Outside the massive viewports, space itself seemed different, as if the fundamental nature of reality had shifted. For the first time in millennia, the masters of galactic civilization realized they were no longer in control. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would be writing the new rules. Dr. Patricia Hayes stood before the massive observation deck of the human command ship Darwin, watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance. The planet looked peaceful from here, its blue surface giving no hint of the deception that had protected humanity for 3 decades. Second thoughts? Asked Admiral Michael Torres, joining her at the reinforced transparent aluminum viewport. His weathered face carried the weight of commanding humanity's hidden fleet, every single day. Patricia replied without turning from the view. But after seeing their true nature, after understanding what they really intended for us, we had no choice. The Darwin hung in space beyond Earth's moon, invisible to any sensor technology the Council possessed. It was one of 15 command vessels positioned throughout the solar system, each capable of coordinating the defense of multiple star systems. Report from our surveillance network? Patricia asked. Admiral Torres activated his neural interface, streams of data flowing directly into his consciousness. All monitoring stations report normal Council activities. Their leadership is still reeling from Ambassador Reed's revelation. No indication they've detected our true capabilities yet. Patricia finally turned from the viewport, her expression troubled. How long do you think before they realize the full scope of what we've hidden? Unknown. Their technology focuses on domination rather than innovation. It may take them considerable time to understand how far ahead we've actually advanced. The observation deck's holographic systems activated, displaying a real-time map of human space. What the Council believed was humanity's single solar system was actually the diplomatic center of a civilization that had quietly spread throughout local space. Show me the real deployment, Patricia commanded. The display expanded dramatically. Hidden installations appeared throughout a dozen star systems, manufacturing complexes built inside asteroids, research stations positioned in deep space where no Council sensor could detect them, defensive platforms that could eliminate threats before they knew they were under attack. 47 colonies, Torres reported. Total population approaching 2 billion. Industrial capacity exceeding the combined output of the Council's primary manufacturing worlds. Patricia studied the display with mixed emotions. While the Council had spent 3 years planning humanity's absorption into their labor system, humans had been building a civilization that could challenge their galactic supremacy. The moral weight of what we're about to do never gets easier, she said quietly. Torres nodded grimly, but the alternative was extinction disguised as integration. They've eliminated 67 species using the same methods they planned for us. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. Reed's face appeared in holographic form, broadcasting from the Council chamber where he remained as humanity's representative. Patricia Michael. Status report. All assets remain hidden, Torres replied. Council surveillance continues monitoring our decoy installations. No indication they suspect the true scope of our capabilities. Reed looked exhausted but determined. How much longer can we maintain the deception? As long as necessary, Patricia answered. The question is whether we can resolve this without revealing everything. Once we show them what we've really built, there's no going back to quiet development. Reed rubbed his temples. The Council is fragmenting. Some members want immediate military action against our surveillance network. Others are beginning to question their entire approach to species integration. And Supreme Chancellor Vorthak? Furious but cautious. He knows we've outmaneuvered them diplomatically, but he doesn't yet understand how completely. Patricia exchanged glances with Torres. They had prepared for this moment since the first Council transmission reached Earth 30 years ago. Humanity's brightest minds had analyzed every aspect of galactic civilization, identifying weaknesses that could be exploited without massive bloodshed. Phase 2 is ready for implementation, Torres reported. If negotiations fail, we can begin systematic demonstration of our defensive capabilities. Reed's expression darkened. What does that involve exactly? Targeted disruption of Council supply chains, Patricia explained. Nothing that harms civilians, but enough to demonstrate that their infrastructure is completely vulnerable to our intervention. And if they escalate to military action? Torres activated a secondary display showing human fleet positions. Ships that appeared primitive by Council standards were actually equipped with weapon systems, decades beyond anything the galactic powers possessed. Then they discover that their assessment of human military capability was as wrong as their assessment of our technology, Torres said grimly. Reed was quiet for several moments. Patricia, I need to know. Are we prepared for full revelation if this goes wrong? She looked again at the star map showing humanity's true extent. Hidden cities built inside planetoids, research facilities that had solved problems the Council considered impossible, defensive networks that could protect human space from any conceivable threat. Thomas, she said using his first name, we've been ready for 15 years. The question isn't whether we can challenge them. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what happens afterward. Because once we reveal ourselves fully, Torres added, we become responsible for fixing everything they've broken. 67 absorbed species, billions of enslaved beings, an entire galactic civilization built on exploitation. Reed nodded slowly. And we become the targets of every species that's profited from the current system. Then we'd better make sure we win completely, Patricia said with finality. Because half measures will get everyone killed. The transmission flickered as Council monitoring systems attempted to track its source. Human encryption technology kept the signal secure, but the interference indicated increasing Council desperation. Thomas, they're trying to trace this communication. I know, They've been attempting to locate our transmission sources for hours. Their technology can't penetrate our signal masking. Patricia made a decision that would change galactic history. It's time for the next revelation. Show them what they're really dealing with. Torres activated commands that had been prepared for months. Throughout the solar system, human installations began dropping their stealth fields. One by one, Council sensors detected energy signatures that should have been impossible. The Darwin itself became visible to long-range scanners, its massive bulk dwarfing anything in the Council's conventional fleet. Around Earth's moon, manufacturing complexes revealed themselves, their industrial output readings causing Council monitoring systems to register critical errors. My God, Reed breathed, watching Council reaction data stream across his displays. Their entire sensor network just went into emergency analysis mode. They're seeing manufacturing capacity that exceeds their core worlds, Torres reported with satisfaction. Energy generation that surpasses their most advanced installations. Defensive systems they can't even classify. Patricia watched Earth on the main display, knowing that the peaceful blue world the Council had targeted for exploitation was actually the command center of a civilization they were completely unprepared to face. The psychological impact should be considerable, she said clinically. Their entire worldview was built on technological superiority. We've just demonstrated that assumption was wrong. Reed's communication channel carried sounds of chaos from the Council chamber. Alarms, urgent conversations, the unmistakable noise of a power structure realizing it faced an opponent it didn't understand. Patricia, Reed said urgently, Council fleet movements are being detected throughout the galaxy. They're mobilizing everything. Military response to diplomatic embarrassment, Torres analyzed. Predictable but foolish. Should we reveal our defensive capabilities? Patricia considered the question carefully. Showing the Council their surveillance network had been a warning. Revealing their true industrial base was a demonstration. But displaying human military technology would be a declaration that the galactic balance of power had permanently shifted. Not yet, she decided. Let them commit to a course of action. Once they cross the line into actual aggression, we respond appropriately. Reed nodded grimly. And if they attack Earth? Patricia's smile was cold as the space between stars. Then they discover that humanity has spent 30 years preparing for exactly that possibility. The transmission ended, leaving Patricia and Torres alone with the weight of command. Outside the viewport, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware that its children were about to reshape galactic civilization. The time for hiding was ending. The demonstration of power was beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Council war fleet assembled in the void between stars, its massive formation stretching across millions of kilometers of space. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak stood in the command center of the flagship Eternal Supremacy, his 6 arms working frantically at control interfaces while tactical displays showed the deteriorating situation across the galaxy. Fleet status report, he commanded, his voice carrying barely controlled rage. Admiral Korvash materialized beside the tactical display, his scarred carapace reflecting the glow of weapon readiness indicators. 1,200 vessels ready for immediate deployment, Supreme Chancellor. Every major Council species has contributed ships to this operation. Target analysis? Problematic, Korvash admitted with obvious reluctance. Human installations throughout the Sol system are generating energy signatures beyond our classification systems. Their defensive capabilities remain unknown. Ambassador Nexus pulsed with agitated frequencies from her station. Unknown? We are the premier military force in the galaxy. How can primitives possess unknown capabilities? Because they were never primitives, Chancellor Morvex observed from her position near the command center's edge. Her serpentine form coiled with nervous energy as she studied intelligence reports. Every assumption we made about their technological level was wrong. Vorthak's massive fist crashed against the control surface. Assumptions are irrelevant. We have the largest military force in galactic history. Whatever tricks they've hidden, overwhelming force will crush them. The main display updated with incoming data from Council Intelligence Division. Captain Zephyr materialized as a hologram, her crystalline form flickering with urgency. Supreme Chancellor, we've detected additional human installations throughout local space. Their true civilization extends far beyond the Sol system. Explain. Long-range sensors are identifying industrial complexes in systems we believed uninhabited. Manufacturing centers built inside asteroids. Defense platforms positioned at strategic points throughout the local spiral arm. Admiral Korvash processed the tactical implications. They've been building a military infrastructure while we thought they were confined to a single system. How extensive? Vorthak demanded. Unknown, sir. Their stealth technology prevents accurate assessment. But based on energy signatures we can detect, their industrial capacity may exceed our own. The command center fell silent, except for the hum of weapon charging systems and the distant vibration of 1,200 warships maintaining formation. For the first time in millennia, the Council faced an opponent whose capabilities they couldn't accurately measure. Sir, Captain Zephyr continued, there's more. We've intercepted human communications traffic that suggests their military fleet is significantly larger than initially assessed. How much larger? We're detecting quantum tunnel signatures throughout the local region. Conservative estimates suggest several thousand vessels using propulsion technology we don't recognize. Vorthak's multiple eyes blazed with fury. Impossible. No species could hide such capabilities from Council surveillance. Unless, Morvex interjected quietly, their surveillance technology is superior to ours. The implications crashed over the command center like a tidal wave. The Council's power had always rested on their technological advantages over younger species. If humanity possessed superior technology, a new alert chimed, and the display showed an incoming transmission marked with human military identifiers. A new face appeared, an elderly human male wearing what appeared to be a simple uniform, but his bearing commanded immediate attention. Council leadership, the human began. I am Admiral Michael Torres, commander of Earth's Strategic Defense Force. You are approaching human space with hostile intent. Vorthak moved to the center of the transmission pickup. Human, you will surrender immediately. Your species will submit to proper Council authority. Torres' expression didn't change. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak, I'm afraid that's no longer possible. You see, your actions over the past week have clarified humanity's position regarding galactic civilization. You have no position. You are primitives who will be integrated like all the others. Are we? Torres asked calmly. The transmission background shifted, revealing a vast operations center with tactical displays showing real-time positions of both fleets. Based on your current approach vector and fleet composition, you're planning a direct assault on Earth, is that correct? Admiral Korvash stepped forward. Human Admiral, you face the combined might of galactic civilization. 1,200 vessels with firepower that can sterilize planets. Surrender now and your species will receive merciful treatment. Torres nodded slowly. 1,200 ships. Yes, we've been tracking your mobilization for the past 6 hours. Impressive formation discipline, Admiral Korvash. Your reputation as a tactician is well deserved. Then you understand the futility of resistance. Actually, Torres replied, I understand something else entirely. You've brought a military force designed to overwhelm primitive civilizations, but you've never faced an opponent with equivalent technology. The display around Torres expanded, showing tactical readouts that made the Council fleet appear small by comparison. Human vessels began revealing themselves throughout the region, not the few hundred ships Korvash had estimated, but thousands. Their energy signatures indicated weapon systems that defied classification. What you're looking at, Torres explained conversationally, is humanity's response to 30 years of studying galactic military doctrine. We've analyzed every major Council campaign, every tactical innovation, every strategic weakness in your approach to warfare. Ambassador Nexus pulsed with alarm. Those ships, their configurations don't match any known design principles. Because we developed different principles, Torres confirmed. While you've spent millennia perfecting weapons designed to terrorize primitive civilizations, we've been developing technology specifically intended to defeat Council forces. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak's roar echoed through the command center. Enough posturing. All ships advance to attack positions. I wouldn't recommend that, Torres said quietly. The human admiral activated a control interface and space around the Council fleet suddenly filled with energy signatures. Human ships materialized from apparent empty space, surrounding the Council formation with vessels that appeared from nowhere. Stealth deployment, Admiral Korvash breathed, his tactical displays struggling to process the sudden appearance of an entire fleet. They were here the entire time. Actually, Torres corrected, we've been here for hours. Your sensors couldn't detect our approach because our stealth technology is approximately 50 years ahead of your detection capabilities. The tactical situation reversed in seconds. What had been an overwhelming council advantage became a perfectly executed human ambush. 1,200 council ships found themselves surrounded by twice their number of human vessels, whose weapon systems were already locked onto their targets. You see, Supreme Chancellor, Torres continued, his voice taking on a lecturing tone, you made the same mistake with military planning that you made with diplomacy. You assumed that because we appeared primitive, we actually were primitive. Vorthak's massive form trembled with rage and growing fear. This is impossible. No species developed such capabilities in isolation. Who said we were isolated? Torres asked. For 30 years we've been studying your civilization, your technology, your military doctrine. We've had access to detailed intelligence about every aspect of Council operations. How? The same way we've accomplished everything else. By being much more advanced than you realized, and much more patient than you expected. Captain Zephyr's voice cut through the tension with urgent analysis. Sir, energy readings from the human vessels indicate weapon systems with output levels exceeding our shielding capacity. If they open fire, your entire fleet will be destroyed in approximately 4 minutes, Torres finished. Our targeting computers have identified optimal strike points for every ship in your formation. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in galactic history, a Council military force faced complete tactical disadvantage. What do you want? Vorthak finally asked, his voice stripped of its previous arrogance. Torres' expression remained calm. The same thing we've wanted from the beginning, Supreme Chancellor. Change. The current system of galactic exploitation ends today. You can participate in building something better, or you can be removed from the equation. And if we refuse, then you discover what happens when a species that spent 30 years preparing for war decides that diplomacy has failed. The transmission ended, leaving the Council fleet floating helplessly in space, surrounded by an enemy they had never imagined could exist. The age of Council supremacy was ending. The question now was what would rise from its ashes. 1 year after humanity's revelation changed the galaxy forever, the transformed Council chambers hosted a gathering unlike any in galactic history. The massive amphitheater that once echoed with the arrogant pronouncements of species dominance now buzzed with collaborative discussions between equals. Ambassador Thomas Reed stood at the central podium, no longer the lone human facing hostile judgment, but now serving as the first Director General of the Galactic Cooperative Assembly. Around him, former Council members sat alongside representatives from species that had been enslaved for millennia, their voices finally heard in galactic politics. The Assembly recognizes the delegate from the Thylorian Commonwealth, Reed announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. A being that had once been property of the Council's mining operations now rose to address the gathering. The Thylorians had been among the first species liberated by humanity's intervention, their industrial worlds freed within days of the standoff that ended Council supremacy. Honored Director General, the Thylorian delegate began, her harmonic voice translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. The Commonwealth wishes to propose expanded educational exchange programs with the Terran Research Initiative. Reed nodded approvingly. The educational programs represented one of humanity's most successful innovations, sharing advanced technology and scientific methods with species eager to rebuild their civilizations after centuries of suppression. In the observation galleries above, Director Patricia Hayes watched the proceedings with deep satisfaction. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Several species had attempted to maintain the old exploitation systems, and economic disruption from ending forced labor had required massive humanitarian interventions. But the results exceeded every projection. Status report, she murmured into her neural interface, connecting with Admiral Torres aboard the command ship Darwin. All sectors stable. Torres's voice responded directly into her consciousness. The last resistance movements collapsed 3 months ago. Former Supreme Chancellor Vorthak's species has formally requested membership in the Cooperative Assembly. Patricia allowed herself a rare smile. The former Council leadership had proven surprisingly adaptable once they realized that humanity's revolution offered greater prosperity than their old system of domination. The hegemony's advanced manufacturing capabilities, freed from the burden of maintaining control over subject species, now produced innovations that benefited the entire galaxy. And our long-term projections? Exceeding expectations. Galactic industrial output has increased by 300% since we eliminated forced labor. Turns out people work much harder when they're paid fairly and treated with dignity. Patricia's attention returned to the assembly floor, where Ambassador Nexus was addressing the chamber. The former council member had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. Her species' analytical abilities now focused on developing technologies that enhanced galactic communication and cooperation. The Crystalline Collective proposes the establishment of joint terraforming projects, Nexus announced, her form now resonating with harmonious frequencies that indicated contentment rather than the harsh discords of her previous hostility. Our analysis indicates that cooperative development yields habitability improvements 200% faster than individual efforts. The proposal received enthusiastic support from dozens of species representatives. Under the old council system, habitable worlds had been hoarded by the most powerful species, forcing others to compete desperately for limited space. Humanity's terraforming technology, another capability they had hidden for decades, had effectively ended resource scarcity as a source of conflict. The chair recognizes the human delegation, Reed announced, stepping aside as Dr. Jennifer Walsh, humanity's chief science coordinator, approached the podium. Distinguished Assembly, Walsh began. Humanity is pleased to announce the completion of our medical research initiative. We have developed treatments for the genetic modifications that were forced upon enslaved populations by the previous council system. The announcement sparked excited conversations throughout the chamber. One of the council's most insidious control methods had been biological modification of subject species, making them dependent on regular treatments that ensured compliance. Humanity's medical technology was finally freeing beings from chemical bondage that had lasted generations. Patricia left the observation gallery and made her way to the restricted section of the station, where the real work of transformation continued. The rehabilitation centers housed former council officials who were adapting to the new reality, learning to function in a galaxy where their authority came from service rather than dominance. She found Supreme Chancellor Vorthak in his quarters, reviewing reports on his species' latest cooperative projects. The massive being looked up as she entered, his 6 eyes no longer burning with the hostile arrogance she remembered from their first encounter. Director Hayes, he acknowledged with genuine respect. Your arrival is timely. The hegemony's contribution to the shipbuilding cooperatives has exceeded all projections. I'm not surprised, Patricia replied, settling into a chair designed to accommodate multiple species' anatomies. Amazing what happens when people work together instead of being forced to compete. Vorthak's expression suggested something approaching shame. A lesson my species learned far too late. We mistook fear for respect, subjugation for order. The important thing is that you're contributing to the solution now. Your people's engineering expertise has been invaluable in developing the new exploration vessels. The former Supreme Chancellor nodded slowly. This new system challenges everything we believed about power and control. Yet the evidence is undeniable. Cooperation produces results that domination never could. Patricia stood to leave, then paused at the door. Vorthak, can I ask you something personal? In all your years of council leadership, were you ever truly satisfied with what you had built? The massive being was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally admitted. We told ourselves that order required oppression, that progress demanded hierarchy. But honestly, I think we all knew we had become parasites feeding on the potential of younger species. Then you understand why change was necessary. I understand why humanity was necessary, Vorthak corrected. Your species brought something the galaxy had forgotten, the belief that things could be better. Patricia left him to his reports and returned to the assembly chamber, where the day's session was drawing to a close. Reed was announcing the final agenda item, a proposal from the newly formed Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program. The Assembly will now hear from Representative Korvash of the Reformed Military Coalition, Reed announced. The former Council Admiral now addressed the gathering as an advocate for peaceful conflict resolution. His warrior species had found new purpose in protecting trade routes and exploring dangerous regions of space, their military expertise channeled toward constructive goals. The Coalition wishes to share our advances in space exploration with any species interested in expanding beyond current galactic boundaries, Korvash announced. There are entire regions of space waiting to be explored cooperatively. The offer was immediately embraced by a dozen species, their representatives beginning animated discussions about joint exploration missions. Patricia watched with satisfaction as former enemies collaborated on ventures that would expand civilization itself. Remarkable, isn't it? Patricia turned to find Reed beside her, having yielded the podium to the Assembly's rotating chairperson for closing ceremonies. 1 year ago, half these species had never been allowed to speak in galactic politics, she replied. Now they're leading initiatives that benefit everyone. Any regrets about revealing ourselves? Reed asked. Patricia considered the question seriously. The past year had been intense, dismantling a system of oppression that had existed for millennia while building something better in its place. Humanity had gone from hidden observers to galactic leaders overnight, accepting responsibilities that would shape civilization for thousands of years. None, she said finally. We could have remained hidden forever, building our own civilization while the galaxy stagnated around us. But that would have been moral cowardice. And now, Patricia gestured toward the assembly floor, where hundreds of species worked together on challenges that had seemed impossible under the old system. Now we're building something that could last forever. A galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than exploitation, innovation rather than stagnation. The assembly session concluded with the traditional harmony ceremony, a musical collaboration between representatives from dozens of species, their various forms of communication creating a symphony that had never been possible under the Council's rigid hierarchies. As the last notes faded, Patricia felt a profound sense of completion. Humanity had kept its promise. They had destroyed the old system and built something immeasurably better from its ashes. The galaxy was finally free to become what it had always had the potential to be. A community of equals reaching for the stars together. The age of fire had ended. The age of growth had begun,